Let's go ahead and get started. Our biweekly webinars have become kind of a hit actually for a lot of Soda users, and we're really excited about this week's because a slight change of pace. Whenever I get brought in, it's usually a different topic that we want to go through. And I have a webinar with NSC later this week about proving the ROI of AI, and it's a much longer presentation. And I wanted to be able to showcase this to Soda AI users in our biweekly webinar series that we do. And so this will be a trimmed down version, but if you want to see the full expanded webinar, that is the NSC Health and Safety webinar that's happening on Thursday of this week. So that would be a good resource where we'll go into much more detail. We just have more time. So in this, I want to show why most AI pilots fail for many safety programs and why there's a disconnect between all these promises that the AI industry promises, including Soder, where we talk about, certain things that AI is capable of doing, and then the disconnect to the real world. And so how do we bridge that gap? And I almost have taken an approach of reframing how we evaluate AI and provide a scenario or next steps, actually. So instead of just saying, hey, there's a problem here, I actually tried to come up with a working solution based off of all of the customers that I've spoken to, all of the case studies that we've done here at Soder, but then also just how people are using it in the field. Where can we get a return through this AI investment? So many of the AI vendors, promise ROI. That's like kind of the main point of why you would buy software in the first place is it going to make our business either more efficient? Is it going to save us money? Is it going to make us money? And in the AI world, most of it is around efficiency claims. So AI is going to make us more efficient. This nebulous term of I'm just going to be faster at doing things. And if you've ever used AI products, you know that it can generate text much faster than humans can. But there was actually a study that came out a couple weeks ago that showed very modest improvements in efficiency around like text generation, so report generation. It was like 10 to 15%. And many of these large businesses were like, yeah, that's good, but it's not showing up in actual like a return, right? Like, yes, they may have taken 10% less time, but that may not actually, come out in the numbers. And so that was one of the main use cases that most people were using AI for. And it was very fascinating because everyone just assumed, well, it's definitely going to make us faster at report generation. But all these people were having to go back and modify and edit and change before they set things off. And so the time spent writing was actually now spent evaluating and correcting and editing, and that slowed it down. So one of the main cases or claims is the efficiency. The other is incident reduction. A lot of these are lagging indicators. So like you look at last year's claims and incidents or that frequency, and it takes time for you to really get verifiable numbers. And sometimes pilots, you don't get a full year to really test these things. And sometimes the sample data is not good enough for you to actually validate and verify, yeah, this is going to give us a return on our investment. So that's why sometimes even incident reduction claims, um, you know, could be a little bit too much or one step too far for a pilot to really be successful at proving if AI can generate a return. The other is cost savings. This is one that I push back on a little bit at the start because most of the time at the very beginning, especially in a pilot, it's just a cost add. You're adding, let's say, a couple $100 a month in AI spend to your budget. There's not really a cost savings. It's not like anyone's lost their job. It's not that any money is being saved yet. It's just it's an addition. And so whenever people make the claim that, hey, it's going to save you money, it's like it may be true if you're tracking the right things or you give it in a long enough time horizon. And so that's where some people do a pilot and they're like, hey, it didn't save us any money. It actually costed us tens of thousands of dollars. So, that didn't fall through. And then there's a little, disconnect there. And then the last one is case studies. Sometimes case studies are very specific to a single business. So one business used AI to do this. And they're like, well, we have a similar business or we have a similar business model. So AI should also help us. And what we're finding is it's not all only can the AI drive efficiency or drive savings for an industry, but it also needs to match your business entity. Like, can your business and the people that operate your business uh, adapt and adopt these tools properly in the same way that these other companies did. And a lot of times they're not one-to-one comparisons. And I'll explain that at the very end. I think a lot of people are measuring AI like it's traditional software. And I think that's actually the incorrect framing that I was talking about at the beginning, which is this isn't Salesforce. This isn't a traditional like SaaS product, maybe thinking of your EHS platforms. AI does not, it does parallel things, but it is not the same type of system that an EHS or a SaaS product would be. And so whenever I hear people asking for usage data or adoption rate within their business, it always is like, I think we might be measuring the wrong thing because just because someone's using AI and metrics are going up on usage doesn't actually translate into a discernible ROI. And so if we're measuring it strictly on are we using it more, we might fall into a trap. And I really want to dive into that. And that will be kind of my main thing at the end. What instead of measuring it like an AI or like a software service, I actually think we should measure it like it's actually a safety professional. Um, if the AI wouldn't get promoted, like if it wouldn't get a raise at the end of the year, it probably doesn't deserve ROI credit because a lot of what it's doing and what AI is actually geared to do is like, let's say the body of work of this AI system across the entire, company, this body of work, is this quality? Is it quantity? Does it have all the metrics of like, man, this is almost like we just added a new employee for $200 a month. This is great. This has outputted results for us that we would have had to hire somebody else to do. And I actually and a lot of people don't like this comparison because then it starts to beg the question about, okay, well, will this translate into a labor reduction? But what we're seeing is you still need a human to work with the AI system to get that output that you need. And so these systems are not autonomous from the standpoint of no longer needing a human. And so, but what I would say is if you're measuring it as if it were a new employee that there's no one that you could get for $200 a month. Most humans would require much more of an investment on the cost standpoint. But imagine if you just pictured it like that, which is we're paying this thing almost $1 an hour, $1.25 an hour. Let's see if it can return some outputs equivalent to what a human might expect. So the first point is really activity doesn't equal capability, right? Just because you do more doesn't mean that more has been done. And I know that the way I say that might be a bit confusing, but AI has a tendency to make it feel like you're doing a lot of work, and it feels like, man, I'm doing so much. But it does that translate into risk reduction? Sometimes it may just be that you're doing more work and your stats are high. You've done 1,000 inspection as opposed to 750, but was meaningful risk discovered, or were you just kind of doing busy work or doing paperwork, or was there something that actually drove risk down within your business? And that's what I think the biggest challenge with AI could be is it makes us feel like we're being active and makes us feel like we're being productive. But if you're not measuring it properly, that feeling or that subjective feeling doesn't translate into objective findings. So how should we measure it? I'm going to pose a capability test for all of your pilots or all of your trials. If you've got a set period of time, I'm going to propose this capability test so that you can actually prove, is it operationally capable of producing return? even before some of these lagging, metrics move, like, claims reduction or incident reduction or anything like that, before any of those begin to show out in the data, you know, how can we measure the true capabilities of AI in our business? And just as a preface, it's not just one metric, it's actually a system of metrics. There's four that I propose, and there could be more. Like I said, this is something that I want to propose to everybody, and hopefully work together with you guys and safety managers to actually build this out so that it's very clear how we prove ROI. I think it's four metrics. And the four capability indicators, starting in the top left, are high severity hazard ID rate, median time to correct, corrective action reopen rate, and AI dismissal, or the false positive rate. And I'll break down all four of those in details what I mean. Sometimes what I say might click something different in your brain, so I'll explain what I mean. But each of these has to be improving for ROI to be present in my estimation. If you lose one of these, the whole thing kind of collapses. And so let me start with that very first one, which is high severity hazard identification rate. Does AI help you identify more high risk issues within your operations, within your business? If it is just able to detect the equivalent of what a human safety manager could do, great. Okay, but do you need AI then to do that? What we propose is that AI should be trained to find the hidden risks, to find the hidden hazards that maybe a human goes nose blind to. Like, you're just so used to walking around that facility floor, and the AI now is an objective third party that can come in and just see things for what they are. And if you're able to track that over this period of time that I'll talk about at the end, um, are we surfacing more risk than we would if it was just our human team with our old tools, quote unquote, in the old way? Is there an improvement? Are we surfacing more of those problems? And AI can be pointed in this direction. We have workflows within Soda AI, like Hazard ID or Site Audit, that can detect hazards within photos, videos, and be able to tell you what the risks are, and it should prioritize them accordingly. So AI should be pointed at this problem. The second issue, or the second metric that I would propose, is our median time to correct. So once you've identified, there's a risk or there's a hazard or there's a problem that occurred, how quickly can we get to, correcting that issue? These things are interconnected. They're linked. If you identify something, but then the AI doesn't speed up processes of how to correct. And I'm not saying just speed for speed's sake. What I'm saying is, when you know that there's a known risk, how quickly can we get to, okay, we've thought through all of the potential solutions. Can AI help us generate a more quality control than we otherwise would have come up with? Can it come up with things that we never would have come up with? Can it think through problems faster? And I would propose that yes, if AI has all of the context about the problem specifically, it should be able to help us improve the time from identification to all of the steps of the investigation, through the report generation, to correcting the actual behaviors, to correcting the documentation around that procedure. Whatever it is, the AI should be pointed in that direction of, okay, there's a lot of work that needs to get done now that we've identified this problem. Can I use AI to help me speed up this process? And does it move that needle in the time to correct? And I think that obviously these two are interconnected, and you'll see all four of these really play a huge role together. The third one is the corrective action reopen rate. So I use this skeleton coming back to life, because sometimes you put in a control and you think, all right, that's been taken care of, and no one actually just washes their hands of it. We're always remonitoring and making sure that these things are taking place. But if the AI is recommending controls and you're quickly able to implement those controls, but then the problem keeps resurfacing, right? Well, then now AI has just sped up the process but now you have to do it twice because now you have another issue that you have to account for. And so what I think a lot of times is humans have an internal bias, especially safety managers and many professionals. Like we believe that AI is going to come up with maybe a sub what's the word I'm looking for? Like a substandard control compared to what we could come up with if given this enough time. And what I would position is if you work with AI, not so that the AI just thinks for us, but it's almost like a partnership. It's like a strategic executive assistant that's going to pressure test your ideas as well. It's actually going to increase the quality of your own recommendations or controls as a safety manager. And I think a lot of times people see it as where I've seen this, where people shift all thinking to the AI and say, "Hey, I've got this problem. How would you solve it?" And I think that's the incorrect way to use AI. I think the way to use AI is, "Hey, we've got this problem. These are the control documents, these are our SOP, this is all the information. Here's what I'm thinking. Why won't this work?" And use AI as a helpful, but almost an assistant that pushes back on your ideas. I actually created this personally for my own work, which is I have an AI that will challenge me when I'm trying to make a product decision. It does not let me get all the way to the very end of this. It's like a 4 or 5 step process until I have proven that I have one, sufficient data, sufficient evidence, sufficient. I've thought through all the different scenarios, and I've used AI now to refine my ideas so that before I even go to the engineering team, I've already thought through all of these edge cases. I've thought through all these scenarios. And I think AI really does a fantastic job at that because it's black and white. It needs your facts, it needs your evidence. And I think so many times people use AI to think for them. What I would what I have come to really love with AI is I'm going to let it make sure I don't miss anything. So I'm going to use AI to make sure that these corrective actions or these ideas that I have to put in place have been well thought through. All of the contingencies and edge cases, it'll help me think through all of those properly, and we can improve our corrective action reopen rate. I think that would be this is a really important one. And then the last one is the AI dismissal. This is one of the key things I think a lot of people struggle with AI is AI generates so much noise. Let's say that you give it a problem, a picture or something, and there's 3 hazards in there that are really high risk. Well, let's say it picks up 17, and now you've got 14 additional data points that you've got to weed through to get to the three. And sometimes that actually it definitely will slow down your process, but it also can like almost make you miss what is the priority here. When you got 17 things or more, that noise, restricts our ability to see signal. And that can become a real big problem for many people because it's just so much data. And so can AI be trained to really prioritize its findings so that as safety managers, you can trust it? Like, okay, it's going to rank these with our risk assessment. It knows like, okay, this is high risk, this is medium, this is low. Can AI help us do that without giving us so much information so that it becomes a distraction? I think that would be the final bit is if you're constantly, nope, that's no good, that's garbage, or that's a data point that we don't need. If there's so much of that, you're almost turning your job, like your job transforms from what it is today to just kind of filtering through nonsense. And that can actually slow down productivity, that can actually derail a lot of junior safety managers who are looking at 17 findings from an AI, and it's like, well, which one do I prioritize? And that's where the ROI, calculation or the equation can actually fall apart. And so what I position is I think we need to look at this as a system and say, okay, we've got to track these 4 things. If in each variation for each business, it might be slightly different, but these 4 points of, are we exposing meaningful risk earlier? Are we shrinking the time that we're exposed? Do the fixes stick, and is noise declining? right? I think it's pretty simple. These 4 points really simplify things of like, okay, that makes it really clear what we're trying to do and how AI can help us be safer, but also drive ROI. And then the way that I would say that I have seen people have successful pilots is this. I'm going to break down what this is. Most pilots, usually they're like, 3 months long, or they, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, depending on the deal. But what I would recommend is if you can get a baseline for these four indicators for one workflow. So let's say it's your ergonomic assessments. Like you're like, man, we've had a ton of shoulder injuries or we've had a ton of back problems. Like we got an aging workforce. We need to make sure that, we use AI to help us in this ergonomics, department and those risks and hazards along that field. Okay. Baseline test your existing processes without AI on these four metrics, and then implement AI for the remaining part of that pilot. So 45 days and 45 days. I just split it in half, but it could be any number of days. But just making sure that, okay, we want to make sure that this test is done, objectively and accurately without any kind of bias or any type of weights on either scale. Because I think that the other thing is once you've used AI, you almost are like you want it to work. You've almost sunk a lot of time into learning the behavior of prompting and using AI that you're like, no, I'm going to make this thing work, come hell or high water. And I think that it actually might be a bad thing to have so much of that sunk cost bias that we have as humans, because AI can drive ROI in some form within your business. It may not be a clear-cut use case that you read in a case study. It may not be something that another business that you're looking at and you're like, well, we're in the same industry. They're our competitor. We do the exact same thing. It should work for us. And the point that I think is really pertinent is you're not just testing if the AI will help your business, you're also testing your workforce and saying, can we adopt AI? Can we adopt this new tool? And that's a huge discussion within the AI fields is diffusion. Some of these technologies that are out today, like Cursor, Claude Code, you name it, like ChatGPT, some of these products, codecs are fantastic products, but it still takes time for people to change the way that they operate, change the way that they work to implement these new ways of working or these new methods. And it's like sometimes your workforce or your safety team or your operators may be slightly resistant to it in encroaching on some of their space. And it may be like a bit of a fearful thing of like saying, okay, ergonomics is my field of expertise, so this AI isn't going to help me. Okay, great. If that's a barrier, then maybe we go into a different vertical within safety to help us, get our documentation better. But we shouldn't be just looking at this as like it's going to blanket have the same impact across the board because, like I said, it just takes some time to get used to using AI as opposed to some of these old tools. So that's what I would say in closing. AI doesn't fail us because it's really weak, and that sounds a little weird now that I'm saying that. It fails, I think, because we put mismatched expectations on the AI, or we're measuring it wrong. We're aiming it at the wrong problem. If we aim it at the right problem and we really put some guardrails in place within our own operations, I think the AI will drive, because I've seen it with Soda AI. I've watched it happen. I've seen the results and seen the data that it's like, I think the organizations that are committed to finding those use cases within their business are really going to thrive. And then the ones that kind of just say, all right, we're gonna throw it out there and see if people use it, right? I think that's where the pilots are going to fail, and where you see some of these numbers about 95% of AI pilots failing, which is, I think, an MIT study that came out middle of last year. And it kind of took the world by storm because people are like, hold on, if 95% of these pilots are failing, like, what are we paying for, right? Like, what's going on? And if you read into the article, a lot of it was just the expectations, but also they were kind of just giving it to teams and saying, figure it out, use it in your own way. And I think being very strategic about, okay, we know we have this problem, ergonomics. I use that as a great example. Let's use AI, the AI tools. We've got an ergonomic assessment tool within Soda AI. Okay, we're going to get our team fully trained on that. So if I've got to reach out to Soda to get trained on that, so I can make sure our team members are using it properly, like that's what we should do and get our ergonomics field and be really focused on ergonomics. And then once you tackle ergonomics, people have learned how to use the tool, so diffusion to other problems is going to be way easier. But if you tackle small problems that people really don't care about, let's say I'm not saying people don't care about this, but let's say it's a, you know, documentation, like reading through some documents. Now that takes a lot of time, but it doesn't really get you out of bed as super exciting, right? And so if you start it there, people may not be as excited to learn it, and your metrics may be a bit lower. So I always say find those hot button issues that you're like, man, if AI can help us do this, man, we are going to be golden. If Soda AI can do this, this is going to be great. And I'm going to get trained on it. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to make sure that we're doing this right, and then I'm going to properly measure it and then roll it out. And I think that's where our pilots that we've seen, and then also when it's been released into production for, teams at scale, it started very precisely as opposed to generally. And that's my closing remarks is, no dashboard, no use case, no case study is gonna save you from of being very precise in these pilots and being very precise in choosing those problems that you want AI to solve for you. So, with that being said, I will open it up for any questions. I know that this was kind of a truncated webinar because the other half of it will be shown on Thursday. So I do recommend you guys going there as well, which I think will be great. If there are any questions, I'll give it a couple of minutes just in case you guys have any thoughts or comments. But yeah, like I said, we here at Soda really want to help you guys drive impact, and we know that this tool is very capable. But sometimes it does take a little bit of training, and it requires myself or Jess to jump on a call and really hone in that use case so that you guys are using it properly. Because sometimes, these AI tools can take, there's a bit of a learning curve. So we understand that. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate all the time that you spent here today. And like I said, we've got another webinar in 2 weeks. I believe Matt will take that one. But then if you want to see the expanded ROI discussion, register for that NSC webinar here on Thursday. So thank you guys. Have a great day.